Pilates has taken off in recent years. It was originally invented or devised by a chappie called Joseph Pilates. He was born back in the 1800s and was a German from birth. He moved to the UK when he was a young adult or a young teenager, and his background was that he was a sickly child. He had asthma, he had rickets, he struggled with his health, and he developed a strategy of using exercise. He was doing sort of martial arts and gymnastics and boxing and that type of thing, and he sort of made a very strong connection with using his mind, using his body, using his breathing to really gain a lot of strength. Now, as he was German, during the war, he was imprisoned in a prisoner of war camp, and what his role was looking after the prisoners of war. And what he devised was, through his background of physical education, physical work, physical sports, he set about designing the hospital beds. Obviously, prisoners of war weren't able to move, some of them were quite sick in the hospital arena. So he strapped up different springs and different attachments to the beds themselves so that the prisoners could actually exercise while they were in the beds. Hence the different things like the chairs, the reformer. You can see one of the chairs there, which is basically an adaptation of some of the exercises that he did. So the way that he would strategize was that you use the machinery to be able to give you some resistance, so you got stronger, so you could then go on and do the mat work unaided. So, you know, if you were in the hospital environment, you were on the beds, you were on the equipment and that type of thing before you went out and did some stuff on the grass or on the mat outside. So the equipment-based work, and most of us know what reformers are and the Cadillacs or track tables depending on where you've been trained, that's a precursor to being able to do mat work. Mat work is actually really hard because you're using your whole body weight, you're using your own strategies to help, where the machines can give you, because of the springs and the ropes and the pulley systems, they can actually allow you to isolate things. So if I had to, say, lift my leg up here, it's hard work for me. I have to work my shoulder, I have to work my tummy, I have to stabilise through here. Now if I'm on one of the machines and I want to use my leg, I could probably just push against a little bit of spring resistance. So not only am I getting some spring resistance, I'm actually getting some help because the machine's holding me up a little bit as well. I'm not having to worry about where my body is in space. So that's a little bit of a misconception from a lot of people. We have quite a few clients that say, no, I'm not strong enough to get machines yet, I need to start with mat. And it's really the other way around. The mat work is really the hardest work. You've got nothing helping you, nothing supporting you. It's you, your body, your control, your muscles, and the mat. And maybe a little bit of props thrown in as well. So if you're going through some of the Pilates mat exercises, obviously the Pilates for beginners is designed around those exercises. Don't get too distraught or too despondent if you don't get it. We can, have done Pilates for years and still improve. We can always tweak something. We can always make something a bit more comfortable. It's not, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be along the right lines. And that's where probably a lot of people struggle with Pilates. You know, you can be a top athlete, you can be an elite sportsman, you can be a gym bunny or a gym junkie and, you know, as strong as an ox. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a good core, because when we're talking core, we're talking about your ability to control and hold yourself in space, just using certain muscles, not using all the muscles you've got. So Pilates is slightly different in that it really wants you to think about how you're moving, what muscles you're trying to do to make that movement, and what muscles that you're trying to let go, so you're not getting that whole overdrive of let's do everything. If we're lifting the arm up, We're trying to stabilise and lift the arm up. We're not bracing and lifting and pulling and reaching, which is quite a different movement to me doing it that way than it is to me doing it this way. And this is why dancers took a lot to Pilates. When he did his prisoner of war work in the hospitals, there was an outbreak of flu or an epidemic, and the people he was looking after basically stayed well, and a lot of the other prisoners died. So he really honestly thought there was something in this, that, you know, he was working through the right things, he was working through the right principles. And after the war, he went across to America. He met his wife Clara on the way over. They went across to America, and he continued his work, labelling his technique Pilates, in New York. And he was just located a couple of blocks away from a lot of the dancers area, and they started to go to him. There is a real good way that we can use the machines and the techniques and the development of what's happened to get people working freely quite quickly. So it's really, really good in early intervention, really, really good in early rehab, because you can grade what you can do. You can isolate things a lot better. So a lot of the dancers started to follow him, and he got quite good work, and that's when you'll see a lot of it seems to be a bit dancer orientated. It's because of his early days in America, in New York, that he got a lot of the dancer networking, and then of course because the dancers came in, then the social ladies came in, hence why it's had a little bit of a probably pretentious outlook to it until recently, where it's become a little bit more mainstream. But that's the background, that's why it does appear a little bit floaty and a little bit dancer orientated. It has got a lot of those moves in. He studied a lot how people move and also how animals move. So he was looking very much at how to move naturally. I'm very neuro-based from my training from the UK. I did a lot of neuro rehab and neuro-based stuff with, you know, strokes in the elderly and that type of thing before I specialised and did musculoskeletal work. And definitely in terms of like the Bowback method I'm familiar with, it is very much along the principles of trying to normalise movement. It's trying to retrain the body how to move well. So how we start to move when we're little and we're crawling and we're learning to walk and we're learning to do this, to by the time that we become, say, teenagers, where we become very static, and, you know, a lot of the time, certainly now, people are very hunched and slumped, and, you know, by the time kids hit high school these days, they're spending a huge proportion of their time sitting slumped, going home, doing homework, being on a computer, playing video games, and it's certainly the amount of physical activity that kids and us in general are doing these days is a lot less. You know, we don't have that physical input of being able to go and, you know, scrubbing the floors, you know, hand washing, that type of thing, that when I was growing up, you know, things were a lot more labour intensive. We did scrub the floors, we did scrub windows, we did, you know, have to sweep. My mum had a twin tub machine, and we had to drag it out and wash, and then we had to change that into the spinner, then it had to go from the spinner into the tumble dryer. Everything was a lot more labour intensive, and these days, you know, we flick on a rumba and that goes around for us. We have spray and wipe that does a lot of the work for us. You know, there's not that labour intensity that we used to. So movement and strength is something that we're definitely lacking. You know, even thinking back to, you know, 20 odd years ago, the cars didn't have power steering, and these days everything has power steering. Everything's made very easy for us, and we're just putting things into dishwashers, taking things out, reaching into, you know, cupboards and cleaning and that type of thing, but it's a lot less labour intensive than it used to be. So in terms of movement, in terms of things, you know, Pilates is very good. It's making us aware of moving again, and it's also making us aware of how to move well, and that's really the principle behind it. In terms of, you know, seeing me fidgeting, you know, we don't sit still very often either, but in terms of fidgeting and in terms of you know, movement, we're looking at how do we move normally. Can we sit well? Can we stand well? Can we use our bodies optimally? Are we overusing certain things? Are we underusing things? And this is really the key in what we're trying to do with Pilates. It's trying to make the body more efficient. This is why it works well with athletes, because we can get athletes stronger by making them use the right muscles. So if they're overusing certain things and it's not working well, they'll find that they are able to perform better if they retrain their body slightly. I'm an ex-skater. I skated from being 6 years old to being 20, 21, and I wish I had the knowledge in my head back then that I do now, because my God, I would have been so much better. Really from a point of view that we can understand more about what our own bodies are not efficient at and what our own bodies are a little bit weaker at. So hopefully as you go through, you'll recognise things about your body and about yourself, and then you go, that's why I can't do that. I can't do that because this muscle is weak. Or that's why I always favour that leg, because that's my dominant leg. Or the muscles on that side are stronger inherently. So you will have a little bit of a learning curve with your Pilates practice, which is great. Some of us move really well. We're not all dancers that have massive flexibilities and can get heads on knees and legs everywhere. Some of us are really stiff, and we struggle to touch our toes, or we struggle to do our laces up, or we struggle to get out of bed in the morning. It's about improving how you move as an individual, as opposed to trying to get you as bendy and mobile as humanly possible, which is maybe beyond some people's abilities, but we can definitely get you moving better. It doesn't, just because you can't get your head to your knee doesn't mean you don't do it. You go as far as you can. So if you can touch your toe, great. If you can touch your leg, you just work towards the next bit along. So a little bit about the Pilates history there, a little bit about how to try and use it for your own advantage. Try and use it to make things a little easier for you. If you don't get it straight away, don't worry, just have a go. We have a Facebook group. If you've come through our link, you might find that there's a Facebook group. You can always flick a quick message, or you can always email me at info@thecoreexpert.com if you have any questions that you'd like to ask or you're not sure of. So, brief history of Pilates, a little bit about a ramble of how modern day life has turned us all into a little bit of a wuss, where we don't work very hard and we don't move very well, and our bodies are made to move. Our bodies are not meant to sit still. I struggle sitting still, as you've probably noticed. I don't sit still that well. It's sort of, I get very fidgety, and definitely our lives these days are a lot more static. Our bodies don't like that. We end up in pain.